Louis Pasteur, chemist, scientist, and inventor. Born on December 27, 1822, in Dole, France. Louis Pasteur is known as one of the most important scientists in history. People used to believe in miasma, which was said to be a dark cloud that went over people who did wrong things, so people stayed away from them to not get miasma and die. One day, a friend of Pasteur's asked him to help solve the reason of why the local wines were turning sour. Pasteur came up with an idea that ended up changing history. Pasteur observed some samples of the sour wine and he found that there were large oval bodies in the wine. These were yeast. Pasteur then performed an experiment where he poured grape juice into a flask and heated it. This killed all the yeast in the juice. He plugged up the flask with cotton to ferment for some time, but it did not work. So he put yeast back into the juice and plugged it up with cotton again. Fermentation did occur, and so the experiment worked, and he got wine. After his yeast experiment, Pasteur noticed microscopic rods in sour wine. These rods were bacteria. So Pasteur decided to heat grape juice with both bacteria and yeast. The heat killed the bacteria and yeast. After, he added yeast back into the juice and plugged it with cotton. He made sure that no bacterial contamination occurred. The experiment worked, and it resulted in good wine. Louis Pasteur did not accept the spontaneous generation theory. To prove that spontaneous generation was wrong, Pasteur made the necks of some flasks into long tubes. He left the ends of the tubes open. He placed an insulation coil around the tube. This enhanced the sterilization of the air when it was heated. He filled the flask with broth. After heating the broth to be sterilized and the air, Pasteur left it for a few days. No microorganisms were found in the broth, proving that microorganisms do not spontaneously appear. People still did not believe Pasteur, so he did the experiment again. This time, he changed the neck of the flask to look like a swan's neck. He sterilized the broth and air and left them for a few days. The only part found with microorganisms was the bottom part of the neck. Pasteur claimed that they could not move up the neck. Broth and air were clear, so Pasteur proved spontaneous generation to be wrong.
Chickens were dying from chicken cholera, but with a little luck, Pasteur found that oxygen plus aging at a temperature of 42 to 43 degrees Celsius can make cholera lose all of its virulency, creating a vaccine. He then tried the same method with anthrax, the attenuated cultures having no harmful effects, saving the sheep and cattle population.
In 1848, Pasteur came up with the term being right-handed or left-handed. In 1865, Pasteur helped save the silk industry.
Louis Pasteur created a vaccine for rabies. In 1885, he tested it on Joseph Mester, who had been bitten by a dog with rabies. Louis Pasteur took nerve tissue from the spinal cords of infected rabbits. With this, he created the vaccine and gave it to Joseph. Fun fact, Louis did not want to shake anyone's hand. In 1868, Louis had a brain stroke that left him paralyzed on one half of his body.
On September 28, 2015, Pasteur would have died exactly 120 years ago.